call to order the Alexander County Board of Commissioners meeting for October the 1st, 2018. And I will be doing the invocation, and I'll recognize Ryan Mayberry for our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would, please stand. Father, we come to you today. We thank you for this day, and we'll just pray that you give us good, clear minds to make wise decisions tonight that would move the county forward. Pray for all of our citizens, all of our county employees. Pray especially for our emergency personnel, EMTs and Highway Patrol, Sheriff's Department, Police Department, Fire Department as they put themselves on the line for us every day. We thank you for getting us through what could have been a storm last month, and we survived it good. We pray for those that are down east that are not as fortunate as us, that you'd help them, that we'd send and do what we can. Thank you for those that's left from here and have went down there. You just lead and direct this meeting, and we'll give you all the credit for it. Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item up on our agenda is a special recognition of People's Drug Store, and recognize Mr. Phil Eichert, and been a milestone here in our community for a long time. And Dr. Peel will be, or Milton. Yeah, Milton. Okay, Milton will be doing the recognition for us. If you'll come on up, sir, and we'll.
First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to do this. It's kind of tough because this is my granddad and my dad. And I'll try to read this and then feel I've got something to present to you. So we can only imagine the excitement in Tazewell on a Friday morning in December of 1918 as Mr. Roe Campbell opened People's Drug Store to the citizens of Alexander County. As he turned on the lights that morning, little did those citizens know that because of Mr. Campbell's love and passion for the folks of this county, that he would not turn them off for 13,813 consecutive days. And I can attest to that. As I've told Phil, I rarely remember seeing my grandfather except in People's Drug Store. There was an occasional Sunday afternoon when he was known to us as Pappy, would be at home. The genuine and compassionate man was always available to anyone who had concerns or need for his services. Mr. Campbell was proud of his community and was one of the county's most revered and influential citizens. He helped to shape the vision of Alexander County. I'm sorry, Jeff.
That's fine.
If you'll pick up right there, and I was going to defer to Phil on that one, because this gets in talking about my dad.
Back up just a little bit. Mr. Campbell was proud of his community and was one of the county's most revered and influential citizens. He helped to shape the vision of Alexander County. As his years advanced, he proudly turned his life's work and vision over to his son, Roe B. Campbell Jr., Bucky as we knew him. Bucky was a great steward of his father's vision. Like his father, he was a very giving and community-minded person. He served our county at People's Drug Store until his retirement in 1990. I'm going to defer the last part for Phil to speak about as People's Drug Store celebrates the milestone of turning 100 years old.
And Phil, we would like to give you the key to the county. It says, the Alexander County Board of Commissioners hereby presents this key to the county upon People's Drug Store in recognition and appreciation of 100 years of dedicated service in Alexander County, presented October 1st, and I'm going to bring this to you. And Phil, my dad was so proud of you.
Yes, sir.
I know how long these meetings can be. 30 years ago, I became one of you guys and never want to do it again, but anyway. I couldn't do this job without some special people in my life, and I want to recognize Haley Gant and her husband Cameron. She's one of our technicians. Donna Peel and her husband Gary. She's our office manager, and Jason Mull's going to be responsible for the next 50 years. And I also have my wife with me tonight. She calls the drugstore my other woman. I'm glad that I have two women in my life, and she's understanding about that. I met Mr. Campbell, Mr. Bucky Campbell, in 1972, and I got to make a confession. It's exam time, and I was home for the weekend. I went in the drugstore with my school pharmacy T-shirt on. I was buying No-Dos, and Mr. Campbell Bucky saw me and says, "Are you in school pharmacy?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You need a job?" And I said, "Yes, I need a job." I met him, and I worked with him that summer, and I've never looked back. I learned a lot of lessons from Mr. Campbell and Bucky Campbell, and I hope that we've been good stewards of their dreams and their aspirations, because it's been a pleasure. I feel like we've never, they're the ones who set the bar for us. They were both giants in our profession, and it's just been an honor to be part of the Campbell family and People's Drugstore, and I'm eternally grateful. Thank you very much.
Need to get a couple pictures, if y'all will come up, get some pictures, so.
Hey, Phil, if you want to tell about what you're doing on that day, I did not include that because I said,
Well, we don't trust the month of December, so November the 9th, we're celebrating our 100th celebration. Of course, we're giving away a new car that day to one of our customers. We're going to be giving $100 an hour away for anybody that has a prescription filled during that hour. We're going to be recreating the old soda fountain, so if you guys want to come by for a Nut Sunday, I'll personally make it for you. I still remember Hal will be feeding you lunch. We're going to have some good time. We're going to have the old time soda fountain. We're putting up a tent, 20 by 60 out back to carry on all this, and we're having a lot of folks back, and I hope y'all have the chance to come by and eat lunch with us. I'd love to have you.
I think my dad loved you more than me and my two brothers. No. You gave him a lot less trouble than we did.
Well, no, he told me some tough lessons.
It turned into Vicky, I think.
Need a knife, I don't.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. And Phil, thank you for the time you served up here also.
Well, thank you. That
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say thank you too. I'm not totally aware of Mr. Campbell's vision back in 1918, but I can assure you that Phil treats his folks and his customers with the utmost respect. My daughter is a benefactor of being able to work there, and she just comes home excited every day. Just a great people doing great things, and we're really proud of all the great things that's going on in People's Drug.
That's right. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it. We'll be looking to see you for another 100 years, I guess. You know?
It's good to be 100.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate everything you do. This time we'll do any commissioner have a report of anything?
Mr. Chairman, I have just a brief thing. Each month we get, those of us on the board as well, I mean, obviously, and actually I think Jamie and Rick and several others, but we get an email basically that just says, hey, this is what the Western Piedmont Council of Government, sort of what we've done this month. And, we often call, we call it the COG. But the Western Piedmont Council of Government serves a great purpose for Alexander County and the surrounding area. And and to, just to kind of give you an idea of what, you say, well, what does the Western Piedmont Council of Government do? Well, obviously, they help with grant writing. They help with, they have planners for honestly anything and everything that local government, does and or would need. But one thing that I wanted to just share with the public, some of the things that they do, they work with folks that are having hard times financially. In July and August, and these are Alexander County people. These are not, because they're listed by county. Alexander County people, the West Piedmont Council of Government did homeowner foreclosure prevention with 9 families in Alexander County. They did housing rehabs in Alexander County. Did 4 housing rehabs in Alexander County. Last month, they provided 100 sets of school supplies to the Alexander County DSS. And each month, it's just, there are little things. I mean, obviously, each month there are homeowner foreclosure preventions, and there are housing rehab programs, and there are education, there are educational programs. They do scholarships for employee education, job retention education, all kinds of things. And I just wanted to give a public shout out to the Western Piedmont Council of Government. They're a much bigger operation than most people know, but they do a lot of good things.
Tell what the Western Piedmont Council of Governments is, what it's
Okay.
made up of.
Western Piedmont Council of Government is basically a group that represents, helps, guides, kind of whatever we need, the counties and municipalities that, make up our 4-county area, being Alexander, Catawba, Caldwell, and Burke counties. And essentially, in today's modern world, if we couldn't work together, if we didn't have the ability to play together with these other counties and townships and cities and communities, we would be at a major disadvantage. Because just like anything else, if you notice, the big guys buying, the big businesses are buying the small businesses, and everything seems to be, I guess you say, the Walmart effect. And same way with local governments. And thankfully, the 4 counties, as well as the townships and cities that make up our region, basically together fund the Western Piedmont Council of Government. There is, federal money, grant money, other things that go into funding that organization as well. But they are there if we need help with anything. It seems like they have the answer, they have the person to do it, or they know where we need to go to get the answer. And they are a very valuable asset to Alexander County and its people, who most of which don't have any idea they exist. So.
And that I'll just add, that's very true. We reach out and do a lot of things with, other regions, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. All 100 counties in North Carolina work together to try to achieve goals that help counties, that help the citizens of those counties. Western Piedmont Council of Governments is just a regional thing, but we work with a lot of other groups and people, mental health. Things don't stop just at the county line. So you have to be able to work with all kinds of people all over North Carolina to make things happen for the people here in Alexander County.
Thank you, guys. Just have one thing to mention. I was able to attend on Friday, something that's finally coming to pass in the county. We did a groundbreaking for the Rotary stage and the murals on the Hefner building. Robert Campbell did those. And the smaller building that's owned by the county. The same guy's working on doing some murals on that. it'll be looking actually like a train depot when it's finished. And I'm glad to see things are kind of moving along. Also, we're progressing real good with the bank building, which will centralize all of our offices there. So it's good to see those things going and coming to pass. And also the stage, I think that'll be a great benefit for the downtown area with things that can go on there, concerts, most anything that someone wants to schedule. And just wanted to pass that on to our people. Appreciate those who did attend on Friday evening. It was a little warm, but it was a good time. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adopt our agenda. I'm sure everyone's had a chance to take a look at it.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple of things if I could before we do that. The Veterans Commission, I'd like to recognize a very dedicated group of people that work extremely hard in our county to take care of our veterans, and they'll be celebrating Veterans Day at East Taylorsville on the 11th, but it's a hard-working group of volunteers that do some amazing things. And also in attendance at DSS the other week or so ago, at the DSS board meeting, Trish shared last month about issues that are with the Department of Social Services, but everyone has an opinion on things, but the regulations that come in through and to that organization are massive, and the rules a lot of times dictate the process, and it's tough sledding for some of the things they have to put up with sometimes. And I'd also like to say big shout out to all of our law enforcement and emergency services folks for preparations during the storm, but also for answering the call to some pretty tough situations over the course of last month. A lot of situations are difficult, but when you have fires and wrecks where you have fatalities and situations like that, that's tough on families, it's tough on loved ones, but it's also very tough on those who respond to those situations. So thanks for all you guys do and ladies. And then the last piece was what started out to be some help for some of our people who were deployed down east to get some supplies. Little old Alexander County filled up a tractor trailer of about 37,000 pounds of stuff, just on word of mouth. Hey, we need some things to take care of some people. And in a day or a day and a half, whole tractor trailer load of stuff went down east. So that's a testimony to the whole entire county for everybody that gets involved and supports things to help people. And that's what we're supposed to do, help people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Peel. That was a good thing. We had, I think, 5 deputies that went down there, and they really didn't know what they was getting into. And, we just kind of take it for granted around here. If I want something to drink or something to eat, you can usually find a convenience store. You go through a McDonald's, you go through somewhere they got there, and there wasn't anything there. So, something, we take a lot of things for granted, but I'm sure that was a great help. And still, we're sending help. I know there's a lot of civic organizations, churches, people that are still sending things down there. So it'll be some time before, things are totally what we call normal for them. But do thank our citizens, and, that's one thing with Alexander County. We're always ready to help, and everybody chips in to help each other and to help someone else, maybe a long distance away that needs help. So, but that's a good thing. Thank you, Commissioners, for those reports. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to adoption of agenda. I'd entertain a motion to adopt.
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Move on to our next item will be public comment. 2 people have signed up for public comment, and I'm sure they're both familiar with the process, but I'll read this just so we're keeping our thing straight. Alexander County Board of Commissioners public comment for October the 1st, 2018. Public comment period is intended to allow the Board of Commissioners an opportunity to listen to citizens' comments and concerns, not a time for the board to discuss issues or answer impromptu questions. Time period of 15 minutes has been established for public comment at the beginning of the first regular meeting in each month. Length of comment for each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Comments will be directed to the board as a whole. Topics requiring further investigation will be referred to the appropriate county officials. Any citizens wishing to address the board during public comment shall call the clerk to the board prior to the meeting and have their name placed on the list. Both of these have done that, so thank you, gentlemen, for coming. And looks like first on the list will be Mr. Dale Clary with candidates for him. Come up, sir.
The 3 minutes will not be an issue. I'm really excited to be here tonight because representing the citizens of the future of Alexander County, working with Kathy, Glenn, and some other folks, we've been able to put together a forum for the candidates for Alexander County Commissioners. This is going to be on October the 11th at 6:30 here. I get excited on these things because it's just a basic grassroots part of our system. And I've heard you guys occasionally complain about people don't come to meetings, don't get involved, and I can totally understand that. Just wanted to explain what we're doing, encourage the community to come out and get to know these 5 candidates and ask some questions. Very pleased all 5 at this point have confirmed their intentions to be here. It'll be pretty much a normal format. There'll be time opening the meeting for each candidate to share thoughts on anything. We'll have a question and answer session. We'll ask some questions. We're going to provide index cards for those in attendance. They can write down questions. Kathy and Glenn will sort through those and bring them to me. I'll be the moderator. And we'll go through them so nothing inappropriate or out of line is asked. But it's just a great way to become an informed voter. And I think it's very fair and supportive of the candidates to become informed. And in our little community, that's a challenge. You know, we just don't have a TV station. So this is a chance to do that. But that will be on October the 11th at 6:30. And help spread the word on it. The last time I was involved in one of these, we had a great turnout, and I'd like to see that again. So thank you for the opportunity tonight, and look forward to seeing everybody here on October the 11th. I'm going to have to leave because I'm late for a church meeting.
That's fine. Thank you, Dale. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
See you, Dale.
Okay, next person signed up for public comment is Mr. Glenn Mays, book sale, I'm assuming the library? All right. Or Friends of the Library.
Friends of the Library. Chairman Reese, Commissioners, Mr. French, Ms. Starnes, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm Glenn Mays, the president of the Alexander Friends of the Library, and I thank you for the opportunity to share some information about an event that will be conducted this week just across the street from right here. It's the Alexander Friends of the Library Annual Book Sale. This year's sale will include at least 18,000 books. That's a big sale. That's a lot of books. Along with various other media, though, there will be such as DVDs and videotapes and CDs. And it's quite a deal for buyers with hardback books just $1 and paperback books 50 cents. Now where can you find a deal like that? They come in just about any topic that you can imagine, and there are lots of children's books too. The sale will begin this Wednesday for Friends of the Library members having an opportunity to shop early. That's one of the benefits of membership in Friends of the Library. But there are lots more too, which I'll cover in just a moment. The shopping hours for members will be 1 to 6 on Wednesday, and anyone who is not a member of the Friends may become a member at the door. And membership fees are nominal at $15 for a whole family, or $10 for an individual, and $8 for seniors and youth. So that too is a great deal because membership gets you some discounts at several area merchants like Mays Meats, Taylorville Scoops, Shortcuts, People's Drug, and Town and Country Drug, Adams Funeral Home, McClendon's Restaurant, Revive Salon, and Klein's Florist. All these places have discounts for members of the Friends of the Library. So that's a very good deal to remember. The sale will open to everyone on Thursday and Friday from 9 to 6, and on Saturday from 9 to 1. Incidentally, talk about a bargain. On Saturday, we will sell books for $1 a bag. That's a little shopping bag, like you'd get at Food Line or Walmart or whatever. And now that's a real bargain. The success of our book sales has continued to grow, allowing us to provide even more assistance for library programs. And in the recent past, the Friends have purchased new outdoor furniture at the library. You may have seen it. The chairs for a reading area inside the library, a $1,000 scholarship for an Alexander Central High School graduate, and purchasing all the books for the Read to Me program, which the Friends work in conjunction with the Partnership for Children. That's just a few things that the Friends support. So now we ask for the support of the community to come to the book sale and purchase a book or many books. It's never too early to shop for Christmas, and books make great Christmas gifts. So I encourage you to come to the sale this week. And thanks also, I've got to say thank you to a lot of people who have helped us to make this happen. One would be Mr. French. He has helped us in a great number of ways, and we appreciate that. But also, we want to say thanks to Josh Mitchell and his staff. They've also helped us a great deal. And also Laura Crooks and her staff at the library. And the cadets at the junior ROTC program at the high school have been very helpful too. Also, I want to thank WACB, the Taylorsville Times, and also a thanks to those people who have donated books. Without the books, we wouldn't have a sale. But a lot of people in the community have brought books to us. We're selling them this week. So we hope that all those books will be gone. But I don't want to overlook Alicia Addington, who is our chairman of the book sale this year. So she has done a great job along with all of her volunteers. So we hope everyone will take advantage of the book sale. Come on down and buy a book or many books, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn.
Glenn, if someone has books they want to donate, what's the process?
They would bring those to the library, and they hold them for us, and we pick them up. Bill Miller is our book sorter. He's the one who picks up the books there, takes them over to the building, and then he's got 2 or 3 people, I think Gail Clary and Jenny Masters, and I think maybe a couple other people who help him to sort through, put them into various categories. It may be a science book, it may be a fiction book, or it may be whatever, but they put those all in various categories, and then we put them out as happened today. They're all on tables down there, categorized. So whenever people come in, they can look at the classification and go to whatever they are interested in seeing. They can find the books and buy them at a very, very reasonable price. So, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 2 is a public hearing, rezoning case 18-4, Greg Kazai. I recognize John Pilkington, our Director of Planning and Development. And I also need to open up a public hearing, I guess, before we start. Have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of opening the hearing, raise your right hand. All right, carries unanimously. Thank you, John. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the board. Tonight we have a public hearing for rezoning case 18-4. The applicant is Mr. Greg Kazai. He's proposing to rezone property located on Highway 127 North. This is property that's located just south of the Mexico Viejo restaurant. You might be familiar with the property. About a year and a half ago, he presented a petition to rezone approximately 9.15 acres of this tract of land from highway commercial to RA 20. His intent then was to develop a multifamily development on the property. He left a residual 1.5 acre parcel for commercial development. At the time, he was proposing to, on the first level facing Highway 127, would be commercial space for retail or office type space, and then the upper floors would have been multifamily development. This rezoning tonight is actually for the residual 1.5 acre tract of land, which I know there's no projector tonight, but I think you have maps, and also on the screens in front of you, you'll see the 1.5 acre tract. He is proposing now to rezone that from the existing highway commercial to RA 20. His intent this time is just to develop the entire property as a multifamily development. As noted in the discussion, the rezoning would not be consistent with the 2008 comprehensive plan. It identifies this area as designated for commercial use. Although not consistent, the rezoning would not negatively impact the future development of the area. The Planning Commission met at its September 6th meeting. They were unanimous in recommending denial of this rezoning request because the proposed use was not consistent with the 2008 Alexander County Comprehensive Plan, which identified this area as for future commercial growth. There were concerns from the board, and I didn't see Bud in here, in case he might want to speak on it since he was at the meeting, that because the property was initially commercial, the entire 9-acre tract of land was initially commercial, there was a portion of it rezoned, approximately, I said 9 acres, it's actually 7, about 7.5 acres rezoned, leaving that 1.5 acres right there along Highway 127 for commercial development. At the time, the Planning Commission felt that that was a fair proposal. You were leaving some commercial along Highway 127, which is a commercial corridor, and then rezoning the remainder to multifamily. At this meeting, they just had concerns that, essentially rezoning the entire property would be going against what the comprehensive plan said, and they didn't necessarily want to set that precedent. So if you have any questions of me, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Mr. Pilkington,
Yes, sir.
how many units total, if this parcel were rezoned, how many units total would be on both parcels?
Or could potentially.
Could potentially be.
I believe, and I haven't looked at that original site plan in so long, I believe it's approximately 120.
Okay, so 120 units. In order to do that, whoever the builder is has to have a commercial contractor's license to do that. All right, I have my commercial contractor's license. If I had just a residential license, I would be limited to building a duplex. The reason I'm saying that is because this is not a residential project. This is a large commercial apartment complex. I have no problem with the 2008 comprehensive plan identifying this as highway commercial. The problem is that we need to go back, and I've said this I don't know how many times, we've got to go back and look at our zoning. Because for this to be able to be built in an agricultural district makes no sense. Our zoning is messed up. Okay, this has to be rezoned RA 20 for this to be built here. That makes no sense. You should be able to build a large apartment complex in a commercial, highway commercial district. I mean, it's just, I think we need to change the zoning. I think we need to rezone this parcel to RA 20, and then we need to go back and we need to look at our zoning laws and allow these large multifamily residential units, apartment complexes, to be built in highway commercial. You look anywhere else, I'm sure that's the way it is.
Commissioner Mayberry, I've said it too several times, sitting right here. Alexander County zoning is dated, antiquated, and just plumb not right anymore. The world's changed significantly. And this is, John, this is nothing to you, I mean, it's not like
Completely
we're
understand.
bashing you by any means. But when you look at if somebody's building an 8-unit multifamily complex, they're doing that to generate income. It is a revenue generating, it's a revenue generation. It's a business. That's why. Yes, I have a lot of kids, but I'm not going to build an 8-unit apartment complex for my family to live in. to build multifamily, you have to borrow commercial money. Is that not correct, Mr. Campbell?
Correct, and it has to be coded as such as income-producing property and is tracked in concentrations.
I mean, you know, and I'm just sort of throwing out some things to show that we do indeed, like Commissioner Mayberry said, we do indeed need to look at where multifamily is, you know, where multifamily development is allowed. You know, if you look at the cost and the revenue generated from a large multifamily development, I'm sure, you know, just thinking of one top of my head, if you go across the 127 bridge into Catawba County, Waterford Place is on the left. If you keep going into town, right behind Walgreens, there's a pretty new one. You know,
Those are in highway commercial districts.
those
That
are
is
in
not-
those are in highway commercials and should be, because hey, you've got 300 units that are generating $1,000 a month. Do the math. There's nothing residential about that. I mean, you know, like I say, I understand the comprehensive plan. I do. The comprehensive plan, honestly, I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's way, you know, I've looked at it personally, and this is personal opinion. I don't think it's way out of line, but I think a large multifamily housing project, you know, and I say large multifamily housing project, I didn't say large multifamily residential project because I don't believe it's residential, is definitely a commercial activity in a commercial, and should be allowed in a commercial area. We do need to consider that there are, you know, there are other things that RA20 can be used for. But when you look at a piece of property that is on Highway 127 in Bethlehem that has sewer access, you know, or a piece of property that's on Highway 16 that has sewer access, or, you know, anywhere else that is a quote-unquote commercial corridor, the owner would be crazy to do anything other than build a large multifamily project if they chose to have that commercial piece rezoned RA20. That's the only reason that would make sense. You know, so I'm very comfortable in not worrying about, oh gosh, we're going to rezone this and Mr. Kazai or someone else is going to build a little 800 square foot single family home on this 1.5 acres that would be very expensive if sold. You know, so I agree with Commissioner Mayberry that to me it's a no-brainer that we.
Yeah. I would also
Oh,
echo
John.
those thoughts. I mean, you're looking at investment, 120 potential households, maybe they have children that go to our schools, it's a tax base. We have 4 corners on 127 and Rink Dam, which is the highest traffic count in the county, correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Or it's not the highest, it's the second highest. Recently, we've seen a bank close, and that's retail, right? We've got another corner that a bank out of state bought that has never opened. The other corner is your corner, and then there's a house on the other one, which would be the most likely, because people say, well, if you do this and you build apartments, what if somebody wants to put X there? Maybe I'm missing it, but I don't think the likelihood of that's real good. And I think the benefits of having this there, the revenue that would be generated, and normally I know the point of having the Planning and Zoning Board is to review this before it gets to us. And I think if you look back, at least the last 4 years, probably 80-90% of the time, we've agreed with their recommendation. This is one of those times I don't. And, you know, that's no disrespect to them. But I think one thing moving forward is we really need to pretty soon look at that zoning and how we classify stuff, because this is an income-producing investment for Mr. Kazai. And it is, the only part of residential is who he's renting it to. It's their residence.
Well, and let me add this, the Planning and Zoning Board did what they were supposed to
Exactly.
do.
Agreed.
And they're not supposed to make those calls on
Right.
that. We are. So,
And we are, of course, we have started the Bethlehem Community Plan process.
Right. Right.
And that is certainly something to look at. And I mean, I've been doing this, 17 years in September, and I actually learned something new as far as how they loan on these. I didn't realize that, and didn't realize you had to have a commercial permit to build these projects. Not something that necessarily I would have known, but it makes sense, you know. And again, we're looking at it, you know, or the Planning Commission, I should say, is looking at it simply from there was commercial zoning here, and we're taking commercial zoning off. You know, I have the same belief about industrial property. I don't ever like taking industrial property zoning off of a map because it is so difficult to get put back on the map. So I think, you know, a lot of that was maybe a lot of their concern too.
Well, and just one other thought. I mean, everybody knows I'm from Bethlehem. Yep, I'm from Bethlehem. Sorry, everybody. But anyway, and I'm in real estate and construction. And I have seen the way Bethlehem's changed. You know, I say Bethlehem's changed in the last 15 years, and I have seen how it has not changed, even though everybody says, oh man, it's coming, it's right here, oh gosh, it's coming. Holy moly, what are we gonna do with all the people? Yeah, well, like Milton said, you know, the intersection 127 Rink Dam Road, my parents own a piece of property that my dad inherited from my grandfather. I've been trying to get a decent retail user on that corner for 14 years. Actively trying. I talked to Gary at the EDC last week. Gary, is that correct? That's the first time I've ever called the EDC, really. But, you know, I thought, well, shoot, the EDC's here, why don't I? But my point being, at this juncture in Alexander County and Bethlehem's history, I don't want to say anything would be good, because that's not the truth. But a large multifamily development, which could potentially put some kids back in the school system, which we need desperately, because, you know, funding from the state's down based on the number of children. We obviously need tax base. You put 100 more households in the county, they're bound to buy some groceries and some gas, you know. So we're looking at sales tax. We're looking at, you know, I can't see any negative. I can't see any negative from it. And with that being the case, you know, I think we need to be willing to bend and try to help make a positive to the community and to the county, you know, work.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of these times where things sometimes look real good on paper, but not too good when you start implementing, especially for, you know, the owner who's going to be developing it. And I think the cost effectiveness, you know, is going to be, you know, a little better on that end of it too. So, yeah, and I agree with the rest of them. We need to do what's advantageous to our county, especially with Bethlehem. I've said it before, no other area is going to have a 4-lane road coming into it. There's going to be some development. There's going to be things going on. So if you have people, they're going to have some needs. So this may help to spin off some other things, you know, too, in that area. So I agree with what you guys have said. Any other comments before we? Does anyone in the public want to speak? No one wants to speak.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, I need a motion to.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
All right, thanks.
second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the hearing, raise your right hand. Okay, hearing's closed. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the rezoning of case 18-4, Greg Kazai.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve that we rezone this piece of property from highway commercial to RA 20, because, well,
Yeah.
because I think it is consistent with our 2008 comprehensive plan, which identifies this area as designated for commercial use. I believe our zoning laws need to be updated to reflect that this is a commercial project. And therefore, I move to approve this.
Okay, thank you. Have a motion?
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion at this point? Okay, being none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And next up, I move on to item number 3, public hearing for 5310 grant enhancement of seniors and persons with disabilities. And I recognize Patricia Baker, DSS Director. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. As stated, I am Trish Baker, DSS Director. I am here before you because we are seeking your approval for our application for a federal Section 5310 grant, which is for the Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program, and it is for our next fiscal year. So the grant will be used to provide transportation services for individuals who are 60 and older. It will be used to provide transportation to nutrition sites, to medical appointments, and other daily life-sustaining needs of this population. We submitted a notice of this public hearing in the Taylorsville Times, and we requested public comment. We had only one comment, and it was not negative, I'm pleased to say. The grant we're proposing will be in the amount of $194,592. Of that, $19,459 will be the county match, which is a 10% match for this grant. And we would include this in our budget request for next fiscal year if you approve.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Baker.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we open the public hearing
Okay.
pertaining to 5310 grant enhancement of seniors and persons with disabilities.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. All in favor of opening, raise your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, public hearing is now open. Any comments from commissioners? Questions?
Tell us a little bit about how this will work once we get the grant.
So this is a grant that we have received in the past for many years, even prior to my being the DSS director. And it's a partnership with Greenway Transportation. We utilize the funds to transport individuals, as stated, to their nutrition sites. So these are individuals who may not have a means to provide their meals, and so they use the transportation to get to a meal site, and we have 2 of those in the county. They also allow individuals, or the grant allows individuals to get to medical appointments when they don't have transportation or don't qualify for Medicaid, and then grocery shopping and things like that. And they contact Greenway to get hooked up to that, or my adult service staff.
Thank you.
And it's just for seniors and people with disabilities, correct?
Individuals over 60.
Okay,
They're not quite senior yet, right?
right.
So it'd be just kind of an add-on to what Greenway's already doing to help out with specific needs.
Right, and it allows us to help those folks we identify get to the services they need.
Okay.
Without a doubt, I'm a firm believer in helping those that truly need assistance. And I'm sure the other gentleman here, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm sure they would agree with that. And anytime we can get grant funding for anything, that's definitely a
Pretty
positive.
good. That's correct. Any comments from the board? Anything from the public? Anyone desire to speak or ask a question?
That's pretty good leverage on your money. I mean, put up a little less than 20 and get a little less than 200,000. That's, last I checked, that was a good deal.
That is a good deal.
Okay, being no response from anyone else, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Have a motion to close?
Second?
Have a motion and a second. All in favor of closing, raise your right hand. Unanimously carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the 5310 grant enhancement of seniors and persons with disabilities.
And Mr. Chairman, that is actually the next item on the agenda.
Okay, so it's the same, so, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll get ahead here, maybe. Okay, this will be item number 4, is to approve, and Tricia Baker's already here with us, so, and she's ready to make her comments.
Well, I'm just asking for your approval for our ability to proceed with the application, and we would request a resolution and a letter of support from you, which I believe Jamie already has.
Okay, yeah, that's,
We don't have to read this resolution out, do we? Okay.
No, you don't.
All right, thank goodness.
all right.
But we do need to vote.
We need
Make a
to-
motion, we approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the resolution for the 5310 grant enhancement program.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mayberry. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, thank you for the second. Any other discussion or any questions? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Okay, moving on to item number 5, public hearing for proposed construction of industrial buildings. I'd recognize Mr. Rick French, and we need to open the public hearing.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we open a public hearing to discuss Alexander County Board of Commissioners' proposed construction of an industrial building.
Second?
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Mr. French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The public hearing tonight is to consider a proposed appropriation from our local government funds or fund balance of up to $2,250,000 for the construction of a 50,000 square foot speculative industrial facility to be sited in the Alexander County Industrial Park. The proposed project will include design, required site development, and building construction. All activities will be subject to the competitive bidding process. This facility is anticipated to result in the future creation of approximately 50 new jobs, paying above the county average weekly wage, and a private investment of approximately $10 million. This new proposed building will be rail-served, or actually it could be rail-served, it's flexible, it could be rail-served or non-rail dependent on who's interested in the facility. The building will not be given to industry, it will be sold. Funds will be recouped from the sale of the building with the goal of reinvesting into another shell building. So we'll basically recycle that money. That money will go right back into the next building. Additional rail-served sites have been identified. You have those before you. I'm sorry the public can't see those, but there's at least 3 or 4 sites and more because of the amount of property that's owned by both EDC and the Alexander Railroad. We're looking at about possibly 10 acres for this proposed shell building. We've had 2 very successful building projects on that property. One, Paragon Films, started out 40,000 square feet initially and then expanded to 100,000 square feet, exceeding $15 million in investment and approximately 45 jobs. And Borealis, who's in the process of getting their facility ready to open. Their building is 50,000 square feet currently, with expansion possible. They have over 15 million in investment and a minimum of almost 37 new jobs. And again, this is something that's been discussed for some time. The intention is tonight that after the public hearing, later in the meeting, there's a budget amendment for moving the money out of fund balance so the project can be started. So I'll be glad to try to answer any questions, but this is something that we've talked about for some time.
Mr. Chairman, or Rick, I love the concept, and the past has proved to be very beneficial. I'm all for doing this, but I think that, you know, we certainly have to consider some things. You know, the opportunity for buildings like this has been, you know, clearly told us in previous meetings that there's not many in the state, so that puts us in a much smaller competitive place for potential suitors. The part that I feel like there's a little bit of heartache on, however, is the fact that unemployment rate is so low, and so many people now have, I think Craftmaster has, you know, 30 jobs that they can't get filled. How does that impact potential suitors for the building with the unemployment rate so low, I guess is my question.
Well, I think you have to consider, and I think if David was here, he would tell you that you have to consider all the folks that leave the county and go work in other counties. And you mentioned it, Commissioner Peel, the idea of having a rail site has been very popular for us. The Borealis project, I think it took about a year for them to locate and work all the details out, and now that building, it will soon be open. They'll have a grand opening pretty soon. So I don't think it'll take that long. It is a concern that our unemployment rate is very low, but at the same time, we had that Borealis, and they're filling those positions. And again, I think you have to consider the folks that leave our county every day and travel to surrounding counties and work.
Well, and I would add, you know, one of the reasons that we're involved in economic development is that we don't want to wait till we have another recession like we did before, and have all our eggs in one basket. So what we're trying to do is diversify our local economy so that more people are working here and not traveling outside of the county. And so that we have more jobs like this Borealis. That's, you know, the first, you know, they manufacture compounds that are used in cars. That could lead into other things. So that's all, you know, we're trying to do is diversify our local economy. I think at the beginning of the 2000s, when we started losing so many furniture jobs, that everybody saw that we don't need to have all our eggs in one basket. And we don't need to rely on, you know, these other counties to be doing the economic development for us. So we want to bring some of those jobs here. But I agree with you. It's, you know, it's something you got to consider, but it's going to be a while before we, you know, get this thing off the ground.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing concept. Just think that, you know, we owe the thought of, you know, at least publicly acknowledging the fact that we believe the upside is better than the downside.
I think you can probably potentially get some of those people that are traveling that are early in their career, but once they get tenured with benefits and things, that's hard to swing them back to quit driving across into Catawba County or Iredell County, whatever the case may be. If you can get that 1 to 5 year person that's not vested in a 401k or right to verge or has X number of weeks vacation, I think maybe those are the folks you can flip and have work here. Just in regard to taking this money from our liquidity position by, you know, not leveraging this, not borrowing, you know, I think we've talked possibly maybe if you needed to, you could backfill the Community One building with some debt because we don't have a lot of debt right now.
That's correct.
How does this affect our liquidity if we spend this $2,250,000? I mean, you can never have enough liquidity, basically.
That's right. Our fund balance will still be healthy. And again, this will not happen all at one time. It'll happen over a couple of fiscal years,
Okay.
which will help us. And again, with the project, the downtown bank project, we can do that. So it gives us time, and actually you have at least, I think it's 18 months to go back and revisit that process if we want to do that. So you'll almost be replacing the same amount of money. The two projects are almost the same amount of money.
In your carrying costs, you'd have insurance expense, I guess. If it's up and it's quote-unquote sitting there and nobody's purchased it, you'd have the insurance expense would be the main expense, I assume.
Insurance and utilities, that would be it.
And you know, I guess there's also a chance that we may not want our next tenant may not want a rail service. So we've got other possibilities, but I think it's a very good idea, especially the reinvestment of it.
Well, I think the last time, correct me if I'm wrong, when Borealis came here, you can't wait till you talk to somebody to build them a building.
Right.
That it has to be, they have to feel it, touch it, see it, at least the shell, which is concrete, flooring, and then steel surround, right? And then they upfit however they need to for their particular industry.
That's correct. And then, like we've experienced in the past, and like Commissioner Mayberry was talking about, you don't want to wait until the building's sold and then you start the process. You know, we're looking at something that's 18 months away, so we need to get started on this. And I'm just, you've worked hard to build up our fund balance. That's something that this board has worked very hard on, taking our lumps over. And I think that gets us in a good position to do that. We always want our fund balance to be more, from my position, because it gives you leverage in things like this, or grants and other things that we get into. But this is a very good idea, and I think it's something that we need to recommend and move forward on.
Well, the great thing too is that once it's finished and sold, we're not having this discussion again. We're turning that money back into the other options that we potentially have listed on the paper.
That's correct.
One thing that I would mention, you know, there are still a few empty buildings here and there. Thankfully, I don't think we have as many, but you know, as Catawba County, and when I think about Catawba County, I'm thinking west of Hickory. I mean, if you go basically, you know, if you go, west side of Hickory being airport toward Burke County, you know, they're just big monsters. They're big, you know, big manufacturing buildings, you know, one after the other that are empty. And I can understand why some people would say, why would anybody build a new building when there are all these existing buildings out there? Well, what we've been told, and as well as with the Borealis compounds, with the building that the railroad and the county work together on, the existing buildings don't meet modern manufacturing needs. And when I say that, this building will be, well, like the Borealis building, it was 26-foot ceilings. Find us a furniture plant in Alexander County that has 26-foot ceilings. Well, and this may sound crazy, but Borealis had to have some of their equipment re-engineered and lowered so it would fit in a 26-foot ceiling. You know, old furniture plants, I mean, I used to go in a previous job, and I mean, you're talking 8-10-foot ceilings everywhere. Because as long as you can stand a couch up on one end and push it on a dolly, you were good. As well as, just flexibility of an open space versus an existing building and all those things. And I see that, and I kind of like Commissioner Peel, I see the benefits. I see it as a good project. I see the positive outweighing the negative. I do, though, have some concern, Craftmaster and several other, I know furniture companies, you know, can't find people to hire. And you're like, well, we want to pull people from other counties. Okay, well, why can't Craftmaster do that? Why are the people not coming, you know, why are people that are working outside Alexander County right now not taking jobs at Craftmaster? Or not taking jobs at, you know,
And they are. I lost an employee who worked for me and is now working at Craftmaster.
well, and, you know, and that,
They are.
and, you know, and that's great. But I, like I say, and I'd love for Alexander County to have bigger, you know, more industry because it, I mean, it benefits everybody. I mean, the tax base, if somebody doesn't have to drive as far to work, guess what? They have more disposable income. They have more money to pay for the things they need. One thing that I've noted, you know, that I've picked up on is Alexander County's economic development has largely been heavily job-based in creating jobs. And this is just, and I don't want to say this is off topic, but one thing I think Alexander County economic development needs to look at is not being 99% jobs and 1% retail, but be a little more considerate of we need retail as things move forward.
I will say.
And I'm saying that because I have one more meeting next month and then I'm gone.
And Commissioner Whale, the EDC has hired a small business person to do that very thing.
And, you know, and I know there have been some things done in the last, 4 years. Some of them haven't worked out as well as we may have thought, but I'm not, I mean, I'm one of those crazy people. I build houses and hope somebody buys them and, moves in them. That's how that's how I make my living. And so I'm not gonna be the one that says, oh, we shouldn't stick our necks out, because I stick my neck out
Every day.
every day.
Just one quick thing about retail. We have been very focused on retail here and at the EDC, but it's tough. It's a tough thing because you got so many people that work outside of Alexander County that they spend a lot of money outside of Alexander County. If they're working here, they're spending more money here. They're going on their lunch breaks to Taylorsville instead of to Hickory or Conover. So that's just one of those things. But, we had that 3-year contract with Retail Strategies to try to bring in more retail business here in Alexander County. And it's a tough thing.
Demographics just are hard to
It is.
overcome.
Yeah, well, I agree on that. We've had a little bit of retail movement in the last 4 years, not really nothing, really great, but, a couple places that have come in. But talking about the spec building or building a shell building, the first one was kind of when it just came on board, I had a little bit of heartburn about it, but it really amazed me at how quickly it sold, and we had a lot of people looking at it. And what still comes back to my mind from the Borealis guy, and we asked him the question when he was here, what brought him to Alexander County? It was the water, the sewer, and the natural gas, all that's going, right by this property. So we've got
As well as the rail.
the rail,
service,
the rail service that no other place really has all of those things. So I'm not a big fan, as Dr. Phil touched on, of spending money, but, when an opportunity like this is around, I think it's, time for us to maybe seize that opportunity and see what comes down.
And I'm sorry,
No, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, I wouldn't say it's spending money, I would say it's investing money.
Oh, yeah,
Just because the whole idea is we expect to get a return greater than what we, greater than what we invest, just like you invest in anything else. Obviously, we expect it to cover its cost plus, you know, plus a little bit in there also, some intangible things being job creation and
property tax.
property
revenue.
tax revenue. And, yep.
Well, and you know, it's like you said, we're getting it back on the other side. And two, with the things that we're doing with the water, the sewer, getting these businesses in, I mean, eventually it has to hit to the schools, it has to hit to the retail, you know, it has to hit to everybody with the things that are, you know, gonna be coming into the county, so.
Well, the other thing is, I think the hardest one was probably the first one, because you really don't know. And so far, 2 have worked. No guarantee the third one does, but a lot of times you'll see a spinoff of somebody that supports one of these industries that's already there, that looks to relocate close to them to supply them. So that's always you have a greater possibility of that today than you did before all this started.
And we've got 2 accessory businesses that have already moved in because of the Paragon Films.
Yeah.
And, you know, I say Paragon Films and the other one that didn't work out, that wasn't a building that we built. But it's a good thing. It'll be a good thing in the long run. And, you know, just think about, you know, if you got 50 new jobs coming in, if they expand, say to 100 jobs, you got $20 million investment, what does that bring in property tax revenue? What do those 50 or 100 jobs do to your local economy when they're spending that money here instead of somewhere else?
As well as hopefully some of them some come from other places and bring a family and
Oh, yeah.
put some kids in the school system and, you know,
It'll be a winner.
start spending cash.
Miss,
All right. Any other discussion?
you need to ask if anybody wants to
need
speak.
Yeah, anyone in the public that wants to speak? Okay, everybody's quiet. Okay, I guess,
Because we've been here a while.
yeah. Yeah. We need to close the public hearing.
A motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the public hearing for the proposed construction of industrial building, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries. Public hearing's closed. So this will be something we later on.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, moving on to item number 6, another public hearing. Approval of road names. I recognize County Manager Rick French. First, we need to open this public hearing. Have a motion?
I've done others. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we open the public hearing pertaining to approval of road names.
Thank you.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. All in favor of opening the public hearing, raise your hand. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously, and recognize Mr. Rick French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County staff requests the approval of the following road names as listed below. Sophie Lane, which is off Old Charlotte Road, Sweetwater Falls Lane, which is off Hopewell Church Road, Tolbert's Greenview Court, which is off Hughes Road. All these names meet regulations as required. Names have been checked for duplication, sound indexing, and other things. Also, we need to rename River Point Court to River Point Drive to match the road sign and what the majority of the residents are currently using. We also need to rename the east portion of Childers Loop that is vacant. Our bridge was removed by NCDOT, and so the new name proposed is Old Beatty Mill Lane.
Okay.
And for sake of time, we won't get into too much of the details.
Okay.
That's okay.
Anyone from the public that has any questions concerning this? Anybody want to speak on it? Anyone on the board have any comment? Really sounds good to me, you know. We need to close the public hearing, I guess, so I'll present it as a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, public hearing's closed. Now I need a motion to, and I'll make this as a motion, that we approve public hearing approval of the road names Sophie Lane, Sweetwater Falls Lane, Tolbert's Greenview Court, and I believe you said River Point Drive, and Old Beatty Mill
Presented, yes, sir.
Lane, as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Approve. Thank you, gentlemen. Carries unanimously. Okay, this one's not a public hearing. Number 7, Medicaid transformation, our PowerPoint presentation. I recognize Brian Ingram from Vea Health CEO. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and Mr. County Manager, should I say boss, great to be here this evening. I give you my disclaimer right up front. It took the General Assembly 3 or 4 years to create Medicaid transformation and kind of set it in motion, so in 10 or 15 minutes, I'm not sure I'll be able to do it much justice, but probably hit the high points, and then make the same offer that I've made with some other counties. If you want to have a work session or something along those lines, that's probably a lot easier way to digest some of this, but I'll do my best. In North Carolina now, in the Medicaid program, we have a form of managed care, which is the LME MCO system. And how that works, and you probably have some understanding of this, is that individuals that have needs for care as a result of mental illness, substance use, or intellectual and developmental disabilities, the LME MCOs, and VIA is one of those 7 LME MCOs, we're public organizations. We act as a public insurance company, essentially, so that we have contracts with providers all over our region, and individuals that need care have their care managed by our organization. So it isn't just a normal fee-for-service kind of relationship. It's one where individuals are looked at and evaluated in terms of what services would they benefit from to get the best outcomes. And a lot of this has to do with, the way the Medicaid program works. It's an entitlement. So if you're eligible for Medicaid and you have medical necessity for a treatment, for a condition you have, you're entitled to care. Here's the issue with that is there's not an unlimited amount of money for that care, right? So what the state has done is very similar to what other states have done. They don't want to bear the whole risk of an individual's need for care in the Medicaid program. So to manage that budget, what they do is they contract with us in this case to be at risk for an individual's care. We get a set amount of money, and we have to manage within that amount of money that we get, even though entitlement care is an entitlement if you're in the Medicaid program. So that's what makes it very challenging. And for the state, a very good thing, because we've saved hundreds of millions of dollars, and we've actually improved the care that people get, and we've improved access. So that's what we have now. The state is now going to a system of managing care for all of the physical health needs that individuals have. And this is something very, very different. This is the biggest change in the Medicaid program in our lifetime. And just to give you some idea of the scope of that, and again, I'll leave through here, and you have these.
Thank you.
This is a handout, okay. If we look at the first standard plans and tailored plans, and then a little bit about the scope of this. Where we're headed is that all of physical health, in other words, any individual in your county that has Medicaid and has a need for some physical health care, is going to have their care managed by essentially a commercial insurance company. The state is allowing up to 4 statewide to bid on this business, so that anyone with Medicaid that needs physical health care will be enrolled with one of these organizations and have their care managed. So there'll be a step between an individual going directly to see a physician or the hospital or the emergency department. Again, which is very different. They're also introducing something called health regions and provider-led entities. And provider-led entity is a little bit like a hybrid of an insurance company. And these organizations will be able to bid on doing this management of whole person care in a variety of health regions, and we'll look at that map in a second. Now, this leaves out some number of other people, and statewide it's maybe about 90,000 that have needs that are much more complicated than you would provide in just a typical insurance program. And those are many of the individuals we serve now. And the tailored plans, you see, are going to be the plans that are developed that will meet the needs of the most complicated individuals in the Medicaid program. So whereas we used to serve all the folks who had needs for specialty care, let's call it, many of those individuals that we manage now and are enrolled in our plan are going to be moved over into that standard plan. And that's one of the big reasons why there was such a challenge politically in getting this legislation passed, because you're making a big change around something that exists in statute to move a lot of individuals into the care that's going to be provided by standard plans. So that's a little bit of a background on that. And of course, when I do these kind of presentations, people are curious about how it'll affect your county. So the next, this one that says population on it, you can see the top level that says VIA. Now this is just our catchment area, which is 23 counties, almost 10,000 square miles. Over 1 million people. The Medicaid eligible population is just under 200,000. And last year, we served almost 35,000 people. And by serving, I mean we manage the care of. We're not a provider of direct service, we manage care. Now, what we estimate is in our catchment area, going forward, if standard plans and tailored plans develop as planned, about 163,000 people would be in those standard plans. Only about 9,000 or so would be in tailored plans. So you see, this is a very, very big change from what we have now. If you look at how that pans out for Alexander County, you can see about 37,000 people, 6,400 people on Medicaid. We touch or manage about 1,000 of those folks. Almost all of them, except for 300, would be in those standard plans. And just about, as I said, 300 would be part of those tailored plans, which we would be interested in being a bidder for. And whenever I talk this along and no one asks me a question, I think I better stop and just make sure if this is making sense, because if you're like any other group I talk to, this is very confusing and hard to condense.
I'm racking up the questions in my head here, and I've been here longer than anybody else, so I've got a little better idea of how this stuff has changed over the years, and it's changed drastically, and the LMEs, and in case anybody didn't know, our county manager is the chairman of VIA Health now. So we have representatives, and who's our, Ronnie? You the
I'm on
guy?
that board,
Okay.
yeah.
You're the commissioner representative to VIA. So it's 23 different counties that go in together on this. My question is, going back to the population, So you're saying right now, VIA has served 1,000, say, in the last 12 months, is that correct? It's 1,000 individuals? And the standard plan estimate is going to be almost 5,500. So are you saying you're going to go from 1,000 to 5,500 individuals served? Is that, okay,
Good question.
all right.
The LME MCOs, and in this case VIA, is not eligible to run that standard plan.
Okay.
These are going to be big commercial insurance companies, all the, Aetna, United, all of the big folks. These are multi-billion-dollar contracts. Okay, it's only the tailored plans where we would be eligible to be a contractor to do that.
I understand that. Okay.
Good
You're going to
questions.
go from serving 34,694 to 8,969?
Ballpark. And again, these are estimates based on, we've kind of picked apart the material that the state has put out in terms of, they have a request for proposal out right now for companies to respond to do those standard plans. And again, these are enormous multi-billion-dollar contracts. Because as you know, the Medicaid program, and I know counties, got out of the business of having a share of Medicaid some years ago, so it was probably a pretty smart deal. These are very intensely competed for. The deadline for these companies to respond is October 19th. And we'll look a little bit later about the timeline of how all of this is going to happen.
Do you foresee the area of VIA is changing? Okay.
Good question. Maybe. And what we could do, and just answer that now, and just kind of jump to the back of here. And it's hard to do without, a screen where I could kind of, use a pointer and talk about it. But towards the end of your packet, see this map? And I apologize if folks, are not able to see that. Okay. Let me try to walk you through this. There's two things that are being shown here. The colored sections on there, and the legend is on the left, represents the 7 LME MCOs right now. So the way the state is broken up now in terms of what our catchment area is displayed there. So you see we're that, dark blue in the west. Now, what the state has done, and they did this actually probably 3 or 4 years ago, they started talking about health regions and they did an analysis which has a lot of pretty significant flaws in it, but at any rate, they did an analysis which created a way to organize the state around health regions, okay? And what they did was essentially they looked at physical health care spending, and they tried to say, within a certain radius, here's a grouping of counties or a region that makes sense based on the way care is delivered and the way essentially Medicaid is expended. Now, one major flaw in that is they left out all the behavioral health spend. So there's another $2 billion statewide that wasn't included in that analysis. So it's limited, but they've held on to that. So if you can make out where the dark lines there are that are superimposed on the state map, and then there's some different designs, I guess. So you see Region 1 there with that dark line, and you see Alexander County, it's over in Region 3, isn't it?
We're like the redheaded stepchild that just, we've finally gotten settled in here to one area and they're kicking us over to another one.
Well,
And-
let's keep our powder dry. How about that?
Okay.
This is the way they have organized things to date. Now, in the legislation that enabled this, which was House Bill 403, there was a lot of pushing and shoving around how standard plans were going to be done and how tailored plans were going to be done. The language up until, I don't know, what comes after the 11th hour, is 11:30, 11 and a half hour? They had it that the secretary was going to determine what the regions look like for tailored plans, which makes sense. All of this has to be financially driven. I mean, there's actuarial guidance that needs to go into place to, it's the Walmart effect, right? Yeah. I mean, there has to be a certain size and scale to all of this to make it work. And if you don't have that, it doesn't work. I mean, it's just what's happened to healthcare and the financing there. But all of a sudden, at the last minute, they said, well, there's going to be at least 5 and no more than 7. So what would the map look like if there were 5 or if there were 7? Well, you can use your imagination, okay? We certainly aren't interested in giving up any of our counties. I mean, we work very hard to establish our relationships. Why are we going to do, why would, moving to this next phase, why would we want to disrupt all of that? So I think we're going to have to wait and see. I'll guess that in the long session next year, there's going to be a big point of negotiation. And it's very touchy, because there's winners and losers.
Yep.
And the General Assembly only wants to wade into this stuff up to a certain point. And, they're not interested in getting pulled into a lot of fights with counties about who goes here and who goes there. But at some point, they're going to have to decide how these regions are going to shake out. Now, that's not to say that we wouldn't go after multiple regions, for example. We wouldn't be limited to going after only Region 1. We could go after more than one. And again, it's going to have to be, we're going to have to know a lot more about this. We're going to have to know, and any of these lines can change. And actually, the legislation spoke to that. So they are not 100% taken with this notion of health regions. It's just what they had on the shelf, and it's what they're using now for the provider-led entities to compete around.
But
So-
if you go from serving 34,694 to 8,969, what does that do to your whole model? I mean, and how does that impact services?
Right, and that's why we put that in there, so that you can really start to get your head wrapped around, what a major change this is. One thing, and I need to emphasize this with all of what we're talking about. In each of these cases, with standard plans and tailored plans, we're talking about all of the needs that the individual has. It's both for physical health and behavioral health, okay? On the standard plan side, there's very, very little in the way of service to IDD folks. So it's mainly mental health and substance use, and it's called the mild to moderate behavioral health needs, okay? Versus over on the tailored plan side, you have physical health needs and a very complicated, very expensive population. So when you think of how insurance works, I mean, you pay your premium whether you have a car accident or not, right? You're essentially paying for the people that do have the accidents. I mean, it's the same in any insurance model, whatever analogy you want to use. We're talking about dealing with, in this tailored plan estimate, all of these individuals are going to have very significant needs. They have complicated problems both around mental health, substance use, IDD, and physical health. So they're the most complicated, most expensive people in the Medicaid program.
Someone else is going to be serving them, taking care of them at that point in time.
We would be the organizations that we would be one of the organizations that would bid on doing that tailored plan. So we're going from, well, you look at the gap between 34,000 and 192,000. okay? And you might say, well, gee, Brian, why, you're not doing very well. You're only dealing with 34,000 people. Well, except that's a really, really high number. Not everybody in that 192,000 needs care, right? Just like everybody that has car insurance doesn't get in a wreck. Same thing. Now we're going to a model where every one of those people is going to need care, and a lot of it. So the multiplier, and again, this would be, good for a work session probably, per member per month is how we're paid. So the number of individuals, that multiplier goes way down, except the expense for the individuals goes way up. Now, does that mean we're bigger or smaller than what we are now? Right now, we're capitated at a little over $400 million. So we're not a small organization. Will we be that big when it comes to this? I don't know. But the whole model, you're right, the whole model is different. It's dealing with a much smaller number of people that all have very significant needs.
You're going to have more exposure, actually,
Which is much
less
riskier.
customers.
Very, 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 very high risk, as opposed to other insurance plans where the risk is spread out. In this case, the risk is going to be concentrated. We know that every one of those people is going to need a lot of assistance and a lot of service and a lot of hands-on attention. So it'd be much more expensive.
And all the other people then are put out to bid to somebody else, so to speak. That's scary,
Well,
considering it's known what it's like currently.
well, it's not unusual, I will say that. Almost every state in the country has done something like this. Because now there is no management to the physical health care of individuals in the Medicaid program. There's nothing to stop people from getting essentially more and more and more. And it's not that they don't, let's say, need it. It's just that it isn't managed. I mean, and we found that when we started. People were getting a lot of care, but just because you're getting a lot of something doesn't mean it's going to be in your best interest. The ability to make sure you get the right things at the right time in the right amount so that you get the greatest benefit. That's what the managed care part is all about. Without the management of that,
Well, and I can see on the physical side that there needs to be some management because, I don't know how many times you may have been, but, I've been to the emergency room late at night because, a buddy of mine, he and his son had a dirt bike wreck. And there are all these folks in there that, they've got a cold. And they're at the ER. I'm not going to the ER unless my leg's hanging off. Because the ER is expensive,
right,
even though I have insurance,
right.
And I can see where some things like that would be beneficial to, obviously, to the taxpayer, to the average American, who's paying in Social Security and Medicare and whatnot. But
I'd say there's probably two extremes if you want to make it really, really simple. There's people that overuse and use the wrong venue, the wrong type of treatment, your example. And then there's people that underuse.
And they
Well,
need
what-
to be using.
Pardon me?
Yeah, you said underuse, and some of these people need to be using some of these services.
Exactly. I mean, so people get in really bad shape.
Yeah.
And they end up later in life with a much worse condition
Right.
that if it would have been dealt with earlier. I mean, however you'd like to think about it, the money or the humanity of it, that the individual would be much better off and probably cost a lot less. So
Both, actually.
yeah, that individual that uses a primary care physician for regular health care and has all kinds of incentives to get a regular physical and all kinds of other preventive medical care, yeah, you're going to spend a little more up front. In the long run, it's better. I mean, we just know that. But you can't enforce that unless you have a program of management. So I'm kind of hopping all over the place here, and I don't want to put you to sleep. You know, another thing that's come up a lot is, you know, how is anybody going to explain this to your 6,400 people that have Medicaid? Who's gonna explain all of this like I have even briefly to you? Rick, right.
He's the man.
Well, I think your DSS folks are probably gonna be doing some of that, and in fact, Christina DePush, our Chief Community Operations Officer, is part of a statewide group that is working on the whole rollout of communication to individuals. And we put in there just a draft of a letter. And the state, of course, is required to do this because, again, it's such an enormous change to the Medicaid program. They have to try to explain this to people, that you're going to be presented with these changes. You'll have to choose an insurance plan to be part of. If you don't choose, you'll be automatically enrolled. This will begin by such and such a date. So, and we have a call center. We have a 24/7, 365 call center, and we know we're going to be answering the phone a lot about all of this. I mean, we'll be talking again before any of this happens. We're probably looking at the spring of next year before communication would start to come out publicly to the broad population of individuals in counties. So there's going to be a lot of explaining to do to people so that they aren't just overwhelmed by how different this is. And you know, they'll be given an opportunity to make, you know, very deliberate choices around which company they want to have represent them in their managed care plan. Oh, that's probably a good enough place to stop. The in the end there, we try to help people keep track of all the milestones. So that runway, we kind of use that to represent our launching pad for our own evolution as a company. And it's a pretty good reference document. One of the, and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, they've decided that both the east and the western parts of the state would go in the second phase of all of this. So whereas the first phase, which is more the center part of the state, this will begin to roll out the spring through the summer and into the fall of next year. The east and the west will probably be, you know, 3-4 months behind that. So we'll at least be able to see how it goes elsewhere in the state before our counties are part of that. So let me stop there, and again, you know, be happy to come back some other time, do a work session. It's you know, it really is a lot to digest, but very, very significant changes for your citizens.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing. We need to kind of keep up with it, you know, as far as our total board. And I know being involved in the VIA Health myself, some on the board. Y'all do a lot of good things for Alexander County, and you know, we appreciate what y'all are doing. So
Thank you. Well, that's what you should expect.
I appreciate your time.
Thanks for coming.
Before they leave, there's also a couple other people, Brian Shuping, who's here with us, and Brian's been with them a good while. He looks after our region and has done a great job. And then Brian mentioned Christina DePush, and she's wonderful. She's just bailed me out so many times with different programs and questions that I have. And we don't want to leave out Gary Blevins. I'll let him slide. Yeah. Gary Blevins is the chairman of the Wilkes County Board, and he's also on the VIA board, and he's chairman of the advisory board now, and he's trying to re-energize them, and we appreciate him being here. So
Gary, I thought you were here for some sort of closed session thing, like, I didn't know what you were doing here. Gary came on the Wilkes board, I guess, the same time I came on the Alexander board, so we've known each other a long time.
Yeah, we're doing a monorail between Alexander
Yeah.
and Wilkes.
Yeah,
Like at
which is
Disney,
good.
you know?
Just
All
a
right.
point of privilege with Josh. Josh, I wanted to acknowledge your comments about the COGS. I'm also chairman of the State COG Association, and we are trying to find a way to integrate the VIA system with the COG system and make those two work together so that we can communicate and get information out more effectively, efficiently to the 23 counties that are in the catchment at the present time for the VIA system. So, and Ronnie, we'd invite you to come. We're re-energizing the County Commissioners Advisory Board. We're putting out a lot of information about what's going on. You're going to get a lot of relevant information you can bring back to your board at those meetings, and I think you'll find it's very beneficial. So,
Okay, all right.
thank you for your
All right,
time.
thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, Gary.
It's nice to have friends in high places, so
Thank you, Brian.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our next item, they've been waiting patiently. Number 8 is a resolution in support of agriculture and protection of farmers in North Carolina. I'd recognize Allison Brown, Extension Agent, Agriculture, Agronomy, and Livestock.
Good evening. I want to first thank you for recognizing the need for such resolution here and how important agriculture is not only to Alexander County, but to North Carolina. Agriculture is a viable part of Alexander County. Farming is not just a job, but a way of life. There are many jobs that require individuals to supply. There are not many jobs that require individuals to supply all of their equipment, rent or own the land that they work on, and be totally dependent on the weather and seasons. Farmers and ranchers do it because they are passionate about providing a safe and reliable product to consumers. The agriculture community is facing many challenges today, and a main one being threatened by frivolous lawsuits. Hog farmers in eastern North Carolina are under fire, and that's one of the main reasons that I am pleased that our county is looking at this resolution and to support these farmers, because a lot of people like to look at those hog farms or poultry farms for that matter as commercial or factory farms, and that's really the furthest thing from the truth, because as you can see, we have several folks sitting back here. They're all families and residents of counties and citizens that are just trying to make a living, whether it's dairy farming or poultry farming or, having cattle. Yes, in some instances, the companies may own the animals, but it's the individuals taking on all of the debt and putting in all the labor. And it's allowed mothers to stay at home and raise their kids and educate them as they see fit. It's allowed families to multiple generations working on a dairy farm and also on cattle farms as well. So these are not factory farms. These are individuals, families that are working hard to provide us with a good product. And I don't know about you, but I like some bacon. So I'm glad that we have people that are willing to do that.
I'm getting hungry right now. You got it in your pocket?
If I did, we would have already had it out. So right now they're dealing with a lot of I think it's just against Murphy Brown, it was like 26 cases that are currently on the docket for nuisance lawsuits. And these farmers have not received any violations. It's just out-of-state lawyers that have saw an opportunity and convinced residents that they're just going to be going after the company's money. But what many don't realize is once they go and lose a lawsuit, those farmers will not get another animal on their property. Those farmers still have to pay for those hog barns and that land that they bought to do that on. So they have a farming industry that they have to pay for, and they're getting no income in. So, I mean, that it's not just going against the companies. It is hurting the farmers and the individuals. And this is why it is vitally important for county government to show their support for agriculture and take a stand against frivolous nuisance lawsuits that will cripple our farmers and our agriculture industry. And so it is with that that we have presented the resolution. Whereas agriculture is one of the most significant drivers of North Carolina's economy, creating tens of billions in economic activity, employing 17% of the state's workers, and accounting for nearly 20% of the state's economy. Whereas Alexander County farmers produce poultry, that's broilers, broiler breeders, and layers, cattle, both beef and dairy, corn, soybeans, wheat, tobacco, hay, commercial fruits and vegetables, nursery landscape. And whereas Alexander County has 58,668 total farming acres, we are ranked 19th. Our little county is ranked 19th in the state for agriculture cash receipts, totaling over $168 million. Whereas we enjoy a food supply that is abundant, affordable, and among the safest, thanks to, in large part, to the efficiency and productivity of North Carolina farmers. And whereas agriculture touches the lives of everyone, whether it be in the clothes we wear or in our daily meals, and it supports other community businesses and the local economy. And whereas frivolous nuisance lawsuits are threatening the very existence of farming in North Carolina. And whereas many independently owned family farms who, despite operating their farms in a law-abiding manner, stand to lose their livelihood as a result of these lawsuits. And whereas it is feared that if this trend continues, it will set a precedent with far-reaching ramifications that could be devastating to North Carolina's agriculture economy, harmful to rural farming communities, and will push hardworking family farmers into bankruptcy by stymieing their ability to produce fruits and vegetables, raise livestock and seafood, and grow crops and their grains. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Alexander County Board of Commissioners, who believes that the agriculture industry is vital to the state's economy and should be protected, does hereby support the North Carolina farmers and is opposed to frivolous lawsuits that jeopardize their success.
I'll go ahead and present it as a motion that we support the resolution in support of agriculture and the protection of farmers in North Carolina as stated in the resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
One quick question. I know, and I think this even makes this more timely with the flooding down east, and you've read some of the narratives of, obviously it's been a tremendous loss of livestock, and then you hear that, the concern about the flooding and what that does to waste and stuff. I mean, I think the timing of this is
Yeah, and
imperative.
it is. And, a very important thing that really bothers me is every news reporter, everyone, all they wanted to talk about was the hog lagoons. Do you know that only of all the hog lagoons down east, only one breached? One. Do you know how many waste treatment facilities overflowed and went into our drinking water? A bunch. So it is just, that's all that they want to focus on is the hog lagoons. And those are the most, our dairy farmers know, they're the most regulated part. They have to keep up with, they have to be a weatherman, they've got to be a farmer, they've got to be, an engineer of sorts. So, they're heavily inspected. So, but yeah, one hog lagoon breached, but that's all they want to talk about.
And across the state, like $80 billion. Why people want to mess with that, I can't understand it, but that crazy lawsuit in Raleigh, it's absurd. If you don't like that, move, or don't move there to begin with.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law is a full-time farmer in eastern North Carolina, and he's a little bit more north than the track of the hurricane. Let me tell you, he was sweating it. And he only lost about a third of his crop, and he was thrilled. So, I mean, it's a tough thing, and, you know, his livelihood depends on it. It's not a part-time farm job, it is full-time. That's, you know, that's what puts the food on the
Yeah.
table. So,
And you're dependent on the
Yeah.
weather and everything else.
Yep.
And I would also like to thank Farm Bureau. They have several representatives here on their board, and, you know, Farm Bureau is very involved in having folks down there in Raleigh, you know, talking to the lawmakers, and they're very influential, and so I'm very pleased that we have a huge representation of their board, of our local Alexander County Farm Bureau board here tonight.
It's a tough life to live, and, you know.
County, it's interesting, Alexander County, as you said, we're rated 19th out of 100 counties, and I appreciate the ones, a lot of these guys in the farms, I know a lot of them, Chapman Farm especially, Bill Chapman, kind of, I grew up in that area, and I see how they work, what they do, and it's a quality operation, you know, firsthand, and it's family-run, so, you know, you're going to take pride in what you do, so I appreciate the farmers that are here, and I appreciate them showing up. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, 7 days a week.
And, you know, this is not a political statement by any means, but, you know, when you have people in legislative places and in the courts, and you have an opportunity to have folks that represent your values, you need to do everything you can to support them. So, you know,
Well, as I stated in an email, we don't live in a day anymore where we can just be complacent to live on the farm and mind our own business. That we're gonna have to stand up for ourselves and what we believe in, and we need to make our presence be known. And so folks will realize how important farmers are and how needed they are, and how many dollars comes into this county because of farming.
That's good. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve. the resolution.
Motion second.
Okay. So we need to vote.
again, though, if we feel that strongly about it, we can prove it again.
Square.
All in favor of supporting the resolution, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
y'all for coming out.
Jamie.
Appreciate it. Okay, get back on.
Sorry you had to
track.
wait so long.
Yeah.
I know this was exciting.
Thank you. Okay, next item is number 9, building inspections update, and recognize Mr. Bill Rogers, Chief Code Enforcement Officer, and been hearing a lot of good things. Appreciate what you're doing there.
Money's well spent then. First time that I've had the pleasure of meeting some of y'all. I'm Bill Rogers. Came on board on April 2nd, and for the 2 weeks before I came on board, after I had agreed to come on board, Mr. French regularly called me and asked me if I was changing my mind. But I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't, because I've gotten to meet a lot of good people, and I think we've made a lot of good progress. I'm not going to bore you with reading. Everybody knows how to read. But there's some numbers here that I'm pretty proud of. In the last 3 months, we've written 29 permits for new single-family dwellings. That's pretty good. And I'm starting to see some faces. I came from across the pond. I'm starting to see some faces that I dealt with across the pond that are coming here.
Right.
So that means people are coming here.
Well, good.
The other thing I'm real proud of is the fact that since April 5th we got back? Since April 5th, we have not had one inspection that was not done the next day. In fact,
That's great.
we routinely add inspections. Mr. Lale can attest to it. If his man calls me up at 9:30 in the morning and says, "Can you get to one to me today?" we get to it. If you average out the number of inspections we've done, just real quick, that's about 17 inspections a day for my inspectors. And I go out in the field. Lately, I haven't been able to. I'm doing a lot of paperwork, but I go out in the field. So And we have, the other number I'm pretty proud of is my complaints are down. I still get them, but we deal with them politely and courteously, and we treat our people as customers. And that's all. And that's what I hope to be able to continue to do.
All right. Well, I
We certainly
appreciate it.
hope that you continue to do it as well.
Me too.
I don't think the atmosphere has changed more in one department in the 4 years I've been here than what you've done, that
I appreciate
you look at the folks as your customers. You know, I'm in the financing business, and we've actually heard people say, I don't want to build in Alexander County previously. That has completely changed. I've heard nothing but glowing remarks. I mean, and I think it all goes to good leadership. I think whatever you've instilled in that staff, it was sorely needed.
Well, I was lucky. I came from a place that customer service is the priority. Mr. Mayberry can attest to it. I used to tell all the people I supervised over there, and I tell my people here, that I can get us out of problems with the code. I can't get us out of rude. And I won't tolerate rude. But I hope everybody's happy. If you have any questions, you all have my personal cell phone number. I kept a personal cell phone. I didn't take a county cell phone, and everyone said I was crazy. And I said, no, I want everybody to be able to call me. So hopefully things will progress. But 29 building permits for Alexander County, that's pretty good.
I want you to stand there. I'm going to brag on you for a minute.
Oh, no.
You've done a fantastic job. Fantastic. And you deserve a pat on the back. And everybody here, and Josh, you know, we've not really talked about it, I don't guess, but we haven't been hearing you complain, you know, 2 or 3 times a week. So I guess that's a good thing.
5 times a week.
did for 3 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes
You
5
make
times a
commissioner
week.
meetings better.
Yeah. Yeah, you, yeah.
Incoming phone calls.
I'll tell you, Josh told me a story about going to a commissioners meeting and someone saying that if anyone brings up building inspections, I'm leaving.
Who was that? Was that Milton?
Yeah, I think I was, said, I'm done.
Yeah, I
If we
did.
don't fix this, I'm out
I
of here.
did.
Anyway, but.
It's the biggest, I've been here, 10 years? It's the biggest turnaround in any department that I've seen since I've been here. You've done a fantastic job. You know, Rick and I spent many times on the phone, many minutes on the phone and in person talking about building inspections before you got here and what we needed to do and how we needed to do it and the approach we needed to take. And you just fit the mold. You came in, you did everything that we needed done. That's, you know, we said we've got to have customer service, and you've done a fantastic job. And I'm really proud of the job you've done and how our department is working now.
Thank you.
Rick, I think my comment was steal somebody from somewhere that's doing it correctly and empower them to do the exact same thing here.
And in support of Mr. French, he actually didn't steal me. Russell Green did.
I'll say, I got to say one thing because, you know, those of you that don't know, my primary job or primary way I feed my family is I am a spec residential builder. And just to give you an idea, right now, I think in Alexander County, I have 7 open permits, I have 6 new constructions and one complete renovation. Building inspections was a train wreck. And when I say a train wreck, I'm talking me sending Rick French pictures of having to pictures of us redigging footings, and when I say that, having grading guy come back out with the excavator and redig them because we couldn't get an inspection in a timely manner. And it rained and they flooded, and we had to take all the you know, rebar grade stakes out, and we had to take the bulkheads out, and we had to redig everything. And I sent Rick a text one time, and I said, "Who do I send the bill to?" Because that affects bottom line.
Well,
and I, you know, and I'm just saying, and I just want to say there were situations that were not what they needed to be, and part of it was just we didn't have the staff that we needed. And what I was getting ready to say, one thing I was getting ready to say is, one thing that Bill has done is the new inspectors that he's brought in, are courteous. You know, they understand that, you know, the folks that pay for building permits are a customer of the county. You know, they're not there's no power trip there, everything is working very well. And, you know, and I feel a little funny because I'm a commissioner and this has affected my business significantly. I didn't have anything, nor did any of us have anything to do with who was actually hired, you know, or where he came from or whatnot. I will say this, I have one house under construction in Catawba County, and I wish it was in Alexander. Because, you know, there's some things about Catawba County now compared to Alexander that I want to just paint through, you know, and, but I think the only thing that we could do better, and this is one thing that Bill has also, one of the things that Alexander County Building Inspections could still do better is the use of technology.
And we will.
And like I say, and I know that's in the works.
Right.
Which is to me is a wonderful thing, and to most builders, you know, you've got your old-fashioned guys, but to most of us, that's gonna be a major step forward as well.
We take debit and credit cards now.
Yeah,
We didn't
I'll
do
say,
that.
you can buy a building permit with a debit or a credit card these days,
There was a time you couldn't.
and,
Well,
Recently.
you just got to look at the results. There's not a 2-week delay from the time
Right.
you call it in till the time you get to inspection. The complaints to us have went to 0. So, I mean, there's the proof. So you've done a great job.
Well, I think the code's being enforced.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, it's how it's being done in the manner, code's still the code. And, you know, you've been able to do that, and I'm sure you've had to turn down your inspectors have, that's just part of it. But it's how you go about doing it, and that has made the difference.
Bill is just a great fit for Alexander County. Not only does he address customer service, he communicates so well with contractors. You know, what he said about his cell phone, the first day or second day he was here, I had 2 calls, which was low for that day, of folks complaining, and he said, give him my cell number. And I thought, oh no, you know, I'll give him the cell phone, and I gave him the cell phone number, and I had 2 callbacks, people thanking me. But he's fit right in. He's, Russell and some of his staff have known Bill from the past, and we were just so fortunate to be here and be part of, he's just been a great fit for us. We all know the complaints that we had. I had more complaints about that than than we all know. It was just on and on and on, but that's pretty much stopped. He's done a great job for us, and I think we're really, I'll say, not to downplay it, but we're just really getting started. Good things are ahead, but we appreciate what you've done, Bill.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill, for what you're doing.
don't let it go to your head.
Yeah,
I thought maybe if somebody was actually listening, they might
thank you.
try to steal him from us.
Well, I mean, and one other thing I want to say about, and this isn't about Bill, but, well, I mean, it is, but it's about the department. And, I mean, when you look at the number of building permits that were pulled in Alexander County over the past couple of years versus what's going on as of now, and I think there's an uptick in permits that are being pulled, and some of that, like I say, spec construction brings people in. Spec construction brings in, I mean, it brings in sales tax, it brings in everything, not to mention it employs local people. As well as, Materials bought locally generate a lot of sales tax. Because building a house is not a small ticket kind of thing. And I honestly think that we're losing that negative, we're losing, that negative, hey, I don't want to build in Alexander County that we've had for a long time. Hopefully there'll be lots more builders that decide to jump in.
Yeah, people used to charge more to come and work in Alexander County because it was so difficult here. So subcontractors, contractors, you name it.
Yeah, I'm glad we got that turned around, so that's a good thing. Appreciate it, guys. Okay, moving on to next item. Number 10 is Special Needs Registry. Recognize our Emergency Services Director, Russell Green.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak. Let me add to what you just said about Mr. Rogers. He's been a pleasure to work with, but I really want to point out, he don't brag on himself or his staff enough. 1,312 inspections in the last quarter. That's unheard of for that staff. And my hat's off to him. He does a great job. And honestly, I've seen him work with contractors, and I've been in the field with him some. He does a great job, and that's made a world of difference for us. It really has. We certainly appreciate him. And he's been blaming me with that every day, so I had to say that. Tonight, gentlemen, I'm here real briefly because I understand from Mr. French, your meeting's only half over considering your closed session, so you got another 2 hours to go. I'm going to make this as brief as possible. I was really counting on having a screen up there to look at, but I'm going to try to do it off this iPad. Tonight, we're introducing a special needs registry. Special needs registry is something that we've known we've needed for some time, and we've worked over the years, and we've talked about it, but it's time to put it into play. And a special needs registry is something we put together, and I'm walk you through it, and then I'll say some other things. But if folks can go to our county website, at the very bottom of the page, there'll be an icon there that says Special Needs Registry. And if you click on that, and I hope Chad's got this scrolling up on your screens, because it's not coming up on my iPad. There we go. Special Needs Registry will pop up. This is all electronic on the computer. And at the very top, it says, if you need assistance filling out the application, contact Emergency Services. Contact our office. We've got 4 folks. We'll get the phone and we'll help you walk through this. But we've made it as simple as possible. It's really, there's minimal typing when you think about it. It's a lot of click and just click the answers. So what we're asking for folks that feel like they have a special need or have some type of limitation, they go online, they put their information in the registry, and it basically asks the questions, birth date, name, address, mailing address if it's different, if you're in a subdivision, which subdivision, your marital status, living situation, need assistance or translator for English, are you hard of hearing, do you need TTD or TTY assistance? And then it gets into medical information. This is a voluntary registry. They only tell us what they want us to know, okay? But it asks questions about hearing impaired, visual impaired, mental, and really you're just checking a box. If you're bedridden, use a wheelchair, have to have a walker, you have seizures, you have IV medications, and I'm just hitting the high spots as I'm going through it, gentlemen. And then are you oxygen dependent? Do you have oxygen concentrator or ventilator of some sort? Is that intermittent or continuous? And then who to contact in case of an emergency, what that relationship is to you. You can put your physician's information in there if need to. Geographically, do you live in a floodplain in our county? Do you have a family member and this was one, if you need assistance with transportation, this example, check one of the 4. You're able to ride in a car, you're able to ride in a bus or a taxi, you van with a wheelchair lift, or an ambulance is required. Check one of those 4. Then it asks about service animals, pets, do you have those? And then emergency planning, do you plan to stay home? Do you plan to stay with family? Do you need to be evacuated to an appropriate facility depending on what the hazards are? And then you hit submit. It goes in a spreadsheet we keep in our office. We don't share it with anybody. We keep that information very confidential. And what will happen is, let's go back to October of last year when a tornado came through Bethlehem. We'll be able to geographically pull out, we've got these 10 or 15 people that live in that geographic area that are on our special needs registry. Hopefully we'll have some good volunteers come into our office. We can put them on the phone and just call and check on these folks and say, are you needing any assistance because of the storm or the tornado, whatever? And hopefully, every couple of days after that, till everything's back to normal, we'll continue to check on them. It'll also give us a heads up on the count of the people that have those special needs. When we start talking about opening a shelter, are we going to have oxygen-dependent folks in that shelter? What's the likelihood of that? Because if you really get the reports from public health, those numbers are staggering for Alexander County, but it's hard to sift through their numbers because it'll tell you everyone that's been on oxygen in the past 12 months, not the ones that are continually on oxygen. So it's a little bit tricky. This is a way we can do this. It asks you right up top the date that you filled it out, and then we would ask you, and it gives you an option, are you going back to update it? And we would ask people to update it, but at some point, probably around a year, we'll have to put forth some effort with hopefully some volunteers or some staff to call these people and say, has your situation changed? So let's keep this up to date. This is something that's pretty widespread across the state. Just about everybody's doing it. And we felt like it was time in Alexander County to have this type of registry. So we've made it as what we feel as simple as possible. If folks are not computer savvy, like me, not computer savvy, I'm surprised I got that thing to do that. They can call our office and literally we can enter it for them. They can have a family member go online and put that information in. That's my entire presentation. I'm hoping you're seeing it on your screens because it's not up there on the big screen. And I'll be working with Micah. Micah's always a friend to us and gets the word out. So we'll be working on an article for that in the coming weeks. But we wanted to introduce that tonight and get that out there for our folks.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, we think it is. We think it's very beneficial. And let me take just a minute before I forget the comments at the beginning of the meeting, thanking our folks that went down east. We had a number of officers, one of the staff in my office, went down east and spent at least a week to assist, and you'd be amazed at some of the pictures they brought back. They are shocking, and there's years of recovery for southeastern North Carolina. It's terrible. So we're proud of our folks. I'm very proud of our citizens that put together a tractor and trailer load. We had another local business that called me and said, I got a tractor and trailer load of water I want to donate. So we went through the process and found a place for it to go. And that's headed down east too. So I was told over the weekend the needs now are cleaning supplies, Clorox, buckets, brushes, those kind of things. So if anybody's looking to put something together, that's what I'm told the current need is for the eastern part of the state. Any questions, gentlemen? Thank you all
Good
very much.
information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. Okay, moving on to our next item is number 11, board appointments and reappointments. COG Unifor Home Consortium. I'd recognize Rick French, County Manager.
One reappointment, that's reappoint me for a 2-year term on the COG Unifor Home Consortium.
Okay,
I move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
okay, a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the candidate, raise your hand. Thank you, Mr. French. You're there again.
Thank you, sir. Budget amendments, budget amendment number 13 to increase the health department budget for additional family planning funds. Budget amendment number 14 deals with the Borealis Rail Project Fund, where the revenues have increased from Borealis 20,000, and that adjusts the project budget for change order request number 1. Budget amendment number 15 is what we talked about earlier with the spec building to budget for fiscal year 2019 portion of the general fund transfer to the capital project fund for the industrial shell building project. The remaining general fund transfer, estimated to be $750,000, will be included in the budget for fiscal year 2020 to budget for transfer of Article 44 524 sales tax funds for economic development from the Bethlehem Sewer Fund back to the general fund. The state loan for the sewer line extension and pump station upgrade project was approved early in fiscal year 2019, so most of the engineering costs will be paid from the state loan proceeds rather than the sales tax. And then we have the project ordinance P4 Alexander County Industrial Shell Building Project. The project authorizes that to move forward by setting up revenues, $2,250,000 with expenditures, $2,250,000. And that's the project ordinance which you're familiar with. That's the same form that we've used for other projects. And I'll be glad to try to answer any questions about the budget amendments or the project ordinance, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. French. Any questions?
Do we need to reiterate that is investment and not? Just thinking. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve budget ordinance amendments number 13, 14, 15, and capital project budget ordinance P-4.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we vote? Everybody's pretty quiet. We're wearing them out.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand and approve, right hand.
My eyes are getting heavy.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we'll recognize Mr. French once again, item number 13, County Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, county staff met with the North Carolina Community Development Block Grant staff and the COG staff concerning the Stony Point Elementary School sewer project, just for the, basically lay out the process. It's very complicated with federal compliance requirements. Western Piedmont Council of Government will be administering the grant, but under these requirements, the county, as we know, is still responsible. The engineering agreement with Weston Associates is under legal review at this time, but it'll be approved pretty soon. Just a couple other things to mention. On October the 20th, of course, is our Apple Festival, and as part of that, the YMCA holds the Apple Festival 5K, and it is the oldest foot race in Alexander County. It's been around 21 years. They have a 5K and a fun run, and registration is still open. And then on November the 3rd, we have the Rocky Face Climbing Festival and Run for the Dogs. We have 4, 8, and 12-mile trail races, and they start at 8:30, and the Rock Climbing Festival starts at 9. On October 27th, which is a Saturday, we have Clean Alexander Day, which Alexander County citizens will be allowed to dispose of their trash at convenient sites in the landfill with no charge. Operating hours for the convenience centers and the landfill will be extended from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on that Saturday only. Convenience centers will only accept bagged household trash. The landfill nor convenience sites will accept any liquid material, hazardous materials, or any material containing asbestos. All citizens are urged to take part in the countywide cleanup day, and again, it's free. If you have any questions, you can contact our Public Works at 632-9467 or 632-1101. And again, that's something we've had a sort of a tradition of Clean Alexander Day, and it's on Saturday, October 27th. Also, we received a notice from Jennifer Martin with the Taylorsville Times that Rocky Face Park was voted the best overall park, recreational facility, and outstanding in camping for Alexander County. So just want to mention that. And that's all I have. I have some things for closed session, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. French. Good information on that. All the citizens remember the October 27th free day for the landfill.
That's right.
Just make sure you've got the right kind of things to dispose of. Moving on to our next item, number 13, our consent agenda. I make it as a motion to approve the consent agenda. I need a second.
Second?
Okay, a motion and a second. I'm sure everyone's had time to look in their packet and their booklet. I'd entertain a vote of approval. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. This time, I'd make a motion to go into adjournment for closed session, NCGS 143-318.11 at 5 and 6 for contractual and personnel. We will go into closed session and will re-adjourn only for the purpose of adjournment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. We're in closed session. Thank you, gentlemen.